Hello. Please pull out your Cornell notes titled Properties of the Number System or your foldable if you have it. I would like you to see me use each of the properties. We can use the distributive property whenever we have an expression or equation that looks like this. 2 times the quantity of 4x plus 7. Whenever there's a number or a variable outside of parentheses, we can distribute it to every element that's inside the parentheses. So an expanded view would be 2 times 4x plus 2 times 7. Then we do the multiplication and get 8x plus 14. If you're comfortable with your multiplication skills, you could go straight to this step. I'll show you that in a few seconds. The distributive property also works with negative numbers. So if I had 2 times the quantity of negative 4x minus 7, I would still distribute the 2 to every element inside the parentheses. The expanded version is 2 times negative 4x plus 2 times negative 7. When we multiply, we will get negative 8x minus 14. Now, like I said earlier, if you are comfortable with your multiplication skills, you don't have to write the expanded version. So if I had the expression 5 times the quantity of 3p minus 12, I could go straight to the multiplication and get 15p minus 60. The next property is the commutative property. The commutative property says to get up and move to a new location, switch places. So if I had an expression like this, let's see, 10 plus 5, I could have them move to a new location or switch places and get 5 plus 10. This also works for multiplication. If I had 10 times 5, I could switch places and get 5 times 10. The next property is the associative property. Okay, the associative property says it has a nickname. It's the grouping property, and it says elements do not physically move; they simply group with a new friend. So if I had an expression like this, let's see, 14 plus the quantity of 3 plus 6, I could move the parentheses and regroup it. 14, the quantity of 14 plus 3 plus 6. This also works for multiplication. So if I have 14 times the quantity of 3 times 6, I could regroup it and make it the quantity of 14 times 3 times 6. The next property is the additive inverse. The additive inverse is the value that brings you to 0. So that means that if you have a number, say 22, you need to find the number that will bring 22 to 0. So I would add a negative 22. That's the additive inverse. And 22 plus negative 22 is 0. Now it also works if I had negative 41. If I had negative 41, I need to find the number that I can add to it that will bring it to 0. So if I had a negative 41, I would add a positive 41. Negative 41 plus 41 equals 0. The next property is the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse says the value that will bring the number to 1. So if I had the number 7, I need to find the number that I can multiply to 7 to equal 1 or to bring it to 1. So I would multiply it by 1/7. 7 times 1/7 is 1. Now if I was given the fraction, let's see, 1/3, I would need to find the number that I could multiply to 1/3 to make it equal 1. So I would multiply it by 3. 1/3 times 3 equals 1. Now suppose I had a fraction like 2/3. I would have to find a number that I would multiply to 2/3 to equal 1. So I would multiply it by 3/2. If I multiply it by 3/2, I will get 6/6, which is 1. So if you notice, what I'm actually doing is, in all three of these, is flipping the fraction. Take the fraction, flip the fraction, and multiply it, and you will get 1. Take a whole number and flip the fraction, the whole number 7/1, and flip the fraction and multiply it to 1/7, and I will get 1. The next property is the additive identity. The additive identity says the value that returns the input unchanged. So what can I add to a number that will give me the same number? It will be unchanged. So if I had the number 15, if I added it to 0, I will get 15. The number is unchanged. And it will also work with negative numbers. If I had negative 15, if I added 0 to it, I would get negative 15. It is unchanged. The next property is the multiplicative identity. And it has the same definition. I need to find a number that will return the input unchanged. So if I had 15 times 1, any number times 1 is that number, I will get 15. It's unchanged. It will also work with negative numbers. So if I had negative 15 and I multiplied it to 1, I would get negative 15. The last property is the zero property. And that says any number multiplied by 0 is 0, and 0 divided by any number is 0. So if I had 21 times 0, the answer is 0. It doesn't matter whether it's a big number or if it's a small number or if it's a negative number. The answer will always be 0. So if I had negative 0.525 and I multiplied it to 0, the answer would be 0. If I had 4,255,372,000, and I multiplied it to 0, the answer would be 0. Now the other part of it is, now you have to be very careful with this. It has to be 0 divided by any number. So if I divided 0 by 21, I would get 0. The 0 has to come first. So if I had 0 divided by negative 0.525, the answer would be 0. And last, if I had 0 divided by 4,255,372,000, the answer would be 0. That's it. Oh, I almost forgot. Your entrance ticket. The entrance ticket. You need to write this on a piece of paper. Which property switches places? Okay, write the answer on a piece of paper and hand it in to me when you walk in the door. This is your entrance ticket. Which property switches places? Name that property. See you tomorrow.